Hello all. So as promised and comment section, today we'll be doing the Q&A based on the questions that you have posted into the comment sections of all the videos in this series. So before we begin, thank you everyone who had a question. I've taken some questions, or not some, all the questions which are in the comment sections, and then I've taken some questions from the community forums. There are some which are prepared, there are some which we'll learn during this video. So stay along. This is just a summary of questions which we saw in the comments. And if you're watching this video for the first time, you will have to go back to the API playlist in the channel and watch the whole series to understand what we are discussing here. Okay. So without wasting any time, let's get into the first question, which is from Sebastian, if I'm spelling it correctly. This is a great content. I have a quick question. How do you know if a table or an API table or an API page, more or less, would allow you to post? Is there a way that can be seen in VS Code or BC? So if you remember, or if you have followed the series, what we have done in the whole series, we have tested how get happens, how post happens, how patch happens, and how delete happens. And the question that Sebastian is asking is how you know which endpoint, which API endpoint will allow you to do which of these HTTP methods. Will all API allows you to do everything? Are there some which will only allow you to do get and not allow you to do a post, patch, or delete, and so on and so forth? And if yes, then where I can see it. So let's first understand from business central developer perspective or AL developer perspective that how you check it. So to begin with, let's open the source code of the API extension, which is here. And in this, we see a lot of API pages in here, right? And let me tell you what these different actions mean in this page. Okay, let me expand it and let me go this up. All right. So this particular API, which is API v2 accounts, is fetching details or allowing interaction with the GL account table. What fields it is exposing is listed here, as we have seen in the past. And then will it allow get is defined by is the insert allowed true or not. So that means I cannot, sorry, get is allowed for sure. Sorry, insert allows means post. Can you do a post on it? So you cannot, because the insert allowed is set as false. Can you call a delete? Defined by delete allowed false. So you cannot delete a GL account from using this API endpoint. Can you do a patch? Which is written here, modified allowed false. If these properties are not listed, the default values of them are true. Let's look at some other. Let's look at company information. So company information does not allow you to, from here, says insert false, modify false, delete false. But maybe I'm looking at something else. I'm looking for some other example, company information. Now this is a little bit different. It doesn't allow you to add a company information. It doesn't allow you to delete the company information, but it does allow you to call a patch request, which is a modify request. So you can call a modify, but not insert or delete on this particular endpoint. In the same way, you can look at any of the APIs like customer. Let's go up. This allows you to do a post, patch, delete, and get obviously. This is the way how a developer will look like, will look into what is allowed or not. But when, as we have discussed during the series, when we are talking about APIs, we always want to give references for an external party. how they can learn this. We will not share the source code with them, obviously. So for them, if you remember during the series, we always talked about that the the company or the extension owner who is building the extension is also responsible to provide a detailed documentation of the API. In this case, what we have done till now, we have only used Microsoft APIs, which are built by Microsoft. So Microsoft holds the responsibility of writing the fully detailed documentation of each API endpoint that they have exposed. So what you need to do, you need to go to the API documentation, and don't worry, you don't have to copy this. I'll add it into the pinned comment of this video. So you need to go to this page, which gives you the documentation of API v 2.0 for Business Central. And here you will find all these APIs endpoint which are available from Microsoft. And inside each API, as we looked into the account, you can see what kind of request it supports. And it gives you all the details. Like when you look at it, it'll tell you that the account resources, you can do the get. There's a navigation, which is the expand property that we looked at. And these are the fields which are available. And this is the kind of sample response that you get when you call this endpoint. But it will only allow you to do a get account. It will not allow you to do a post, patch, or delete. And this is the URL, how you call this endpoint. What is the body? What is the response? How you see what response comes out of it? Every detail will be here for each endpoint which Microsoft releases. Then we looked at company information. Now look at it here. It gives you detail of the company information endpoint, which is this, and it also tells you that you can call a get and a patch. You can't do a delete. You can't do a post. So this documentation is something that you should refer or you should send to your external party to explain them what HTTP request method are available for them when they are using these endpoints. Like we get into customer, you see that you can do a get, delete, create, and update. So all that detail is a responsibility of the extension owner who is building that API. In future videos of this series, if you guys need it, we'll talk about custom APIs, building custom APIs. And if we build APIs pages, it's our responsibility to write the detailed documentation of those API pages. Okay, so hope that answers Sebastian's question. Sebastian, let us know into the comment section. If it doesn't, let me know. I'll try to help you as much as I can. Okay, let's move to the next question. The next question comes from Nilesh and Frickles Master. These are the two similar questions. The Nilesh question is it possible to give customized JSON responses after bounded actions task complete? In one of the video in this series, we talked about bound action and how you call them. Right now, as he saw the recording, it was returning nothing other than the status that we saw. The other question on the similar line is, would be nice if the bounded action posted back the key to the new document that were created. Great. So for that, let me again open the source code, and we'll understand how these bounded action operates. So where should we go? Let's do sales order or purchase order. Let's do sales order because there are multiple bounded actions on that page. When you go down at the end of the page, you will notice that there are these bounded actions. Okay. And then there will be others in other pages. You can check them. I guess sales code have multiple. Yes. There's make order bounded action. There is send bounded action. And then there is a make invoice bounded action. I hope that's it. Yeah. So let's understand a bounded action. So a bounded action is written in this format, and there are some variables in this case, and then it gets the code that you're passing. Then it calls a method which converts code into invoice in this particular bounded action case. And then it gets the sales invoice header. So it does get the header that has been created, and that is then returned into the sales header. How I can verify that? I cannot, maybe I can. Okay, so here it returns you whatever has been created. Once that has been created, then the last line is set action response. Now this is important. Set action response to the action context of sales header. So this, there is a method which is passing the returned invoice to this method called set action response. Let's go up. Here's that method, and it says that if there are different document types, then set the object to that particular. So now it is pointing to an API endpoint. So if the invoice is created, it is setting the context to the API of that sales invoice. If the order is created, then it is pointing that document which is created to the sales order API endpoint, and so on and so forth for codes. At the end, it does a ID link and then maps it to the created document system ID, which is all correct till now. But then at the end, it sets the result code to be deleted. Web service action result code. So what I did, I just searched for it. I said, okay, let me look at it. What are the different options in it? And I just searched for it. And I guess I have already saved it. So if you look at it, it gives you different options. One is created, updated, and deleted. Okay, so there are surely some different options. Let's try typing those and see what other options are there. We saw 3, but let's see, are there other options? Created, deleted, get, none, updated. Updated means item has been updated, none means no status code, get means there's a read, deleted means it has been deleted, and created means it's created. All right. So what is this web service action result code does? Because that is how you will get it, if I remember it correctly. So let me drag this here in the documentation of Microsoft. Web service action response code option type, right? So if this response is set to be deleted, then your API endpoint will return you nothing. If it is set to be created or updated, it is supposed to return you something. And I guess also get. We'll have to test it out. But as we talked about in the previous videos, you cannot extend any base Microsoft API. So even to test out what result will be returned when you call a bound action, we'll have to create a custom endpoint or custom API page and then define this web service action result code to a different value and test this out. So as far as Nilesh and Freaky Master, your comment is to answer your comment, all the standard Microsoft API will not return you anything at this point. If you are looking for a written value of the new document that has been created, posted, and things like that, we'll have to create a custom endpoint. And we'll do it if the community needs it. I don't have any plans right now for that, but we'll see how that goes. Hope that answered your question, Nilesh and Freaky Master. And we'll jump to the next question now. Okay, Nilesh, I have another question. If there are multiple line processes in a batch and error comes, then it will roll back all the records. And then we did talk about it in the comment. And then his other comment was, I think it will not roll back the record which has already been complete. And to answer your question, Nilesh, you are exactly correct. So let's test it out, what Nilesh's question is and what I'm trying to answer, because you might not know what I'm saying. So let me see where my endpoint is, and let me open my VS Code extension for Postman. Okay, let's head up to our postman here, and we are here. Let's try creating a, let me get one of those, and I'll take the example that we did last time. So let me change this to post, and in this I'll remove everything and I'll call it as API v2.0, and then what we did is we had the dollar batch parameter. This question is just FYI, if you don't know, this question is coming from the video where we talked about the batch request. And to save time, I'll just take the same example that we had then here, and I'll go ahead and append that into the body. And then something else I have written, so let me clear that out. Okay, let me paste this in. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create 3 customers. Customer number 1, or not customer number 1, but the request 1, which will create a customer with display name batch 4 and this details. Customer number 2 will also create a customer with these details, and so on and so forth, and then it will create the 3rd customer at this point. So let's make an error into it. So how we create an error is, let me collapse the first body, and in the second body I'll change the salesperson name to be, let's say, Saurav. There's no Saurav salesperson in my database. So right now what's there is the first request is correct, second request is incorrect, and third request is correct. So Nilesh's question is, if I try to post it right now, will it create the first customer and then call the second customer, and because this is incorrect it will fail at this point, or will it also go to the third record and will try to post it? So let's verify that. Okay, so before we do that, let me try seeing that do I have a customer with batch 4. I don't think so, but let me verify that. Customers, and I have all with the name batch, so let me short it out here. No, I don't have one. Okay. So let's see what happens. Will it create 1 or 3, or will it just create as in batch 4 and batch 6, or will it just create batch 4? That's the question. So the way it is written in Microsoft documentation, that it depends on commit behavior, right? So if there are 3 records that are being created, as soon as the first record is processed, it gets committed in the database. You don't have to typically write commit, but when you are passing that record, and if the API is successfully able to process it, that is considered as committed. So the first record should get created, and the second obviously will have an error message because we have intentionally created a error. But will it go to third record or not is the question. So let's test that out. Let's do a send, and we got an status okay. That's the first thing, which is interesting. And the response that I got is, for the first request, the status is 201, and it gave me the endpoint of that newly created customer. So if I have to check that, I can just scan this. Okay. The second one, it said, oh, this is the first one body, the batch 4, which was created. Okay, so I can close the first one. Then it came to the second one, and it says status 400, and there is a question about status, so we'll talk about it in a while. And it says that the field salesperson code in the table customer contains a value Saurav, which cannot be found in the table. Okay, that's the second one with an error message, and then it did not went into the third item. So the behavior of a batch request is based on the sequence that you have defined, and every time you call a batch request, any request or any request in the sequence that you have defined your request, any request before the error one will be committed to the database, and the rest one after the record or after the request that has an error message will not even be processed. Hope that clarifies everything, Nilesh. If it doesn't, let me know. The first one was a post request, and it's not the ID. ID is a unique identifier. You can keep it ABC and all. That's okay. But the sequence it will follow based on how you have placed them in here. Okay. So like right now, if I just cut this and place that as my first request, which is tagged as 3, and then put my first one and make it as here 3, and if the order is correct, let me see the beautify. It does. And let me cut this and paste it here. Okay, so what I've done is I've just changed the order. I said the first item in my list is batch 6, and then batch 5, and then batch 4. So it should only process my batch 6 request, because in the middle there is one which have an error message. So if I do a send now, it should go ahead and create my batch 6, which is this one, which got created, and second one has an error message, and it never reaches to the third one. So it's just based on the sequence that you have defined in your batch request. Anything that has been processed will return you the whole payload of the created request, and based on that you can understand what has been created and what has been skipped, because there was an error in the middle. So Nilesh, hope that answered your question. It's time to move to the next question now. Okay. So the next question is from Imran. Is it possible to send back 409 conflict code back to API call if sales order already exists? Now that brings a very interesting thing about what are the different status code that you can receive from Business Central, right? And let me find one, because I have a detailed link of all the status code. Here are all the officially REST API supported status code. Normally we deal with 201 that's been created, 200, it's okay. The 409 is a conflict code. When you click on it, it tells you that if there is a conflict, then it returns you a 409. But Business Central does not support 409, as in based on what I have learned till now. If you learn something new, or if I'm saying something wrong, please let me know into the comment section. So what happens, as in it says that conflicts are more likely to occur in response to a put request, and put is something which is not supported with Business Central API. The 4 different HTTP method requests that are supported are get, post, patch, and delete. So 409 is specific to the put request, but it's the other interesting part of this question is what happens if there is a conflict, not a conflict, but if the record already exists. Now to answer that question, it depends on, again, back to the API that has been written. Okay. So without wasting much time, let's get back here and let's see. So when you talk about sales order, this is the sales order API page, and we should always look into the insert trigger, what has been written over there. So on the insert record of this API page, it checks that does the customer which has been specified in the API request, does it exist or not? And then there are some checks and balances, but it doesn't review that it exists or not. We did talk about that the ID is the primary key, but then ID is a read-only value that you can do. You can't pass IDs, so on and so forth. But to kind of showcase that, let's look at the another endpoint for customer. So when you look at the customer page endpoint, and if you collapse the layout, you will reach to the point on insert. In the on insert, there is a check based on the name. There is also a check based on the number. And then if the number is not found, then it calls the insert. Otherwise, it should call an error message, hopefully. So let's test that out, because there is no else written. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when I call an insert on a customer which already exists. So how we do that? Let's do a get of, and let me get the endpoint so that we don't struggle with it. Okay. Okay, let's do a get. It is not changing itself. Okay, get, and let me try to get the customers out of it. Hopefully, okay. So I got this. Sorry, it seems I did not follow the right syntax of it. So let me just check that part. Oh, I had a batch. I should not have a batch. Okay, customers. Let's do a send. So I found all these customers that are there. Let's pick one that we just created. If I can find that, I should be able to. Let me check what the number of it. Okay, the customer that we created is C0090. Okay. Now, in case of customer, the number field is something that you can enter, it seems, right? So let's go back and search for that. We got the payload. Here it is. So what I'll do is I'll just, as we do all the time, I'll just copy this payload as it is. Will not modify anything. Flip this from get to post. I'm trying to create a record now. And in the body, I'm going to paste this. There are some fields that we cannot have, but let's not make assumption and let's keep an eye on the status. So when I do a send, what happens? It's a BAT request 400 always for Business Central. It says that you cannot have balance due because it's a read-only field. So let's look for balance due. Where is balance due? Okay, here it is. I cannot have balance due. In the same way, there will be other fields. So let's keep testing that. Text area display name. I cannot use because it's again a read-only field. Let's send this again. You cannot specify last modified date, which is obvious. Okay, let's remove that. Let's do a send. Now here is the error message that you get. What it says, the record in the table already exists, customer number C0090. But if you look at the status, it says bad request. It does not return you a 409 because there is a conflict. And this is not just because I use it as it is. I'll also remove the ID and all. I'm pretty sure it should give an error message even then. Bad request, and the record in the table already exists, identification field and value C0090. So to answer your question, Imran, 409 is directly not supported because as we read into the documentation, 409 will only be generated in case of put request, which is not supported by Business Central. And in case if a document already exists, you will always end up getting a 400 status rather than 409. Hope that answered your question. If it doesn't, let me know. I'll be happy to discuss further with you on this. Okay, let's quickly move to some community question. I'll not spend much time into those. The first one is page does not contain a definition of API v2 purchase invoices. The person who's asking this question is Karthik, and he's saying that he's unable to, he's getting another message while he's, it seems, while he's trying to call a bounded action, it seems. It doesn't give a context of what bounded action it calls, but I highly encourage Karthik, you or anyone else who have a question in the community at this moment, while we're talking about it, to go back and look into this playlist of YouTube, in YouTube called API. Your question specifically about bounded action is defined in this video called Unleashing the Potential of Bound API Action. So go ahead and watch it. If you still have that question, I'll be happy to talk to you further on that. Let's move to the next item, which is implementing an item search engine in Business Central API. So here in this question, the person is trying to filter out the item list with the number equals to a plate, star, or display name equal to. Now equal to, as the name suggests, it tries to equate the value that you're trying to pass. How you can do that? Let's give it a try, and I'll and we'll see how that can happen. I don't have a display name or a number with plate, but we'll find a pattern and let's see how that works. Just give me a minute. Okay, I have an example. Here it is. So when you are doing a filtration, and we have discussed in detail about it, you're kind of applying a filter on item, let's say anything that contain the word PAT, right? It'll give you anything where the display name starts with PAT, like this and this. Now, if you have to do a and, or oh, sorry, if you do have to do a or, right? So the way you do it is you can only do it, and people who have watched the series from the beginning will understand that the it's written in the documentation that you can only use or statement with the single field, not with the multiple fields. And I guess your error also says that. So I can do a display name of Pat or anything that starts with B, and the API will respect it and will give you all the data that is supported based on your request. If you read the error message that you're getting, it says also the same thing. The OR operator is not supported on distinct field. You only can apply OR in one field, as we just saw. If you want to get more details about every different filter parameter that you can use, I would highly encourage you to watch this video about filter your Business Central API data, and that should give you all the insights about filtration. If you still have questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Let's move to the next question, which is around cannot create a sales order with an API. It says everything is set up, the guide, but it's still got an error. Also tried the different content type, but did not work. Now there is not much detail about it of what you're trying to do here. I understand what you're trying to do here, but we don't understand what is your URL that you're being called. I would again highly recommend you to, and we did try create sales order and all, so I would highly encourage you to watch. Where is that? Yeah, in the expand, we did try creating sales order and sales sign at the same time. So watch this one, expanding data with expand, and you'll understand how you should create a sales order or any other document using API, because there are some details about it on that. Okay, what is this one? Error trying to update purchase order via OData. So he's trying to update the order with applying a filter on to find the order. He's just applying the filter and he's trying to pass this. And then I don't get it right because the patch calls the current e tag value on the if match header. What we have tried in this series is while using the patch, you should point to the exact record by getting the ID of that record. And then once you have the ID of the record, you can easily call the patch request, right? So I would highly encourage you to try watching that video where we discussed about how you do a patch request, which should be here somewhere, patch method in Business Central. Watch this, you'll understand how you should do that. If you tried the custom field, then it gets a little bit confusing and you need to exactly match the e tag. And people who have watched the series will talk about it in a separate video if that makes sense. Okay. Last question, read only control error in Postman post in Business Central inventory field. Now this is interesting and this is useful. The person here is trying to update the inventory field on the item endpoint from Business Central. And what he's showing that he cannot do it from the Postman or from the API, but he can manually do it on the item card. Now this is for everyone, good learning that when we are dealing with API, we need to understand that we are not technically dealing with the same page that user sees on the GUI, which is item card in this case. What we are dealing with is a different page called a API page. So if you have a problem like this, make sure to go back and check the API page that you're dealing with. And the field that he was trying to refer is inventory field. Okay. which makes sense. So let's see what the inventory field looks like here. Type, item category, not item category, blocked, G10, inventory. Now if you look at it here, it clearly says that it's an inventory field. It'll get the, it seems a variable that's being passed, and when you assign a value to it, it goes and do some registration. And if it does not get that value, it exits from here and do this. Now let's see where that field is. Inventory value, it's a decimal field, and it is a calculated field based on the inventory. Now when you go back to the item table or item page, to be very specific, okay, let's go here. What does an inventory field look like? It may take some time from here, so let me directly go into the source code and look for that field. Okay, let's do the item here, and I think we should look at the item card and search for inventory field. Okay, caption inventory, no, not this one. Where is that field? Okay, not inventory group. What it is called in the center? Let's quickly have a look here. Item, and then item has a field called quantity on hand. It's called quantity on hand in the standard one. Let's look at it. It's inventory. Okay, even if you look at it here, it's a flow field. It's not an actual field. So yes, in the client, there is a code in the drop down which you cannot see here. I think it gets activated like this. Somehow it gets activated. What he's showing, the user is showing, where you can adjust the inventory, at least in some of the versions. I don't know if it still works or not, but there used to be a drop down or a lookup page on this where you can click on it and it opens up where you can define a different value of the inventory, which then creates a negative adjustment behind the scene, right? So on this page, what this user is referring, you can actually key in the values, and if you reduce the value, it creates a negative adjustment. Otherwise, if you increase the value, it creates a positive adjustment. Now, remember, when you're dealing with APIs, it is not the actual page and behave differently. Now, the inventory field in the API page is a read-only field because it's being calculated when the page gets loaded. So if you have to adjust the inventory, you can do it by using the journals. If there is a journal endpoint, item journal endpoint, you should use item journal endpoint to increase or decrease inventory on your item. Because even when you're doing it from client using this page, it behind the scene, it's creating the journal lines and posting them. So I hope that answers your question, but I would highly encourage you to do it in the right way as it is suggested. Don't think that your pages as you look at the client are similar to what you see on API. It is not a web service page which is exposed as it is. There are different set of pages which are created for API endpoints. So if you are still with me, let me know what you think about this video. If you like the content, if it answered all your questions, do hit the like button and share this with everyone so that people also learn as we are learning together. If you're new to this video and found it somehow on YouTube, please do click on the subscribe button. That helps us to understand how we are doing and what kind of content you like. If any of you which are still here would like me to share whatever I know, which is very little, about the custom APIs, let me know. We'll build that. As we discuss in this video, we have to test out the bounded action possibilities with the custom API. There are some different nuances of custom API which you might not have understood in the base API series. So comment. Let me know if that interests you and if that's something that we should be going forward talking about. And if there is anything that I've missed, any mistakes that I've committed in the whole series, I'll be very open to the feedback that you guys have. And I like to read comments that come from these videos. Thank you. Have a great day. And I'll see you sooner than later.